next episode here, the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A, helping you to be fit and live free. I'm your humble host, Matt Schifferly, and today's episode, before we get into our main topics, is sponsored by Into the AM. This is one of my favorite clothing brands that I've been rocking out lately. One of the things I love about them is that they're good athletic, like workout gear that doesn't necessarily look like workout gear. You know, a lot of times when it comes to trying to buy clothing, t-shirts and things like that, it either looks like you live in a gym or it kind of looks like something that you are trying to rock at the company picnic, and it looks like you're a little try hard. You know, you're wearing this medium t-shirt to try and look your best, and it doesn't portray your physique in the best way. And that's why I love these t-shirts and the clothing from Into the AM, because it's flattering without being too try hard, and you can wear it in casual and great for working out, super lightweight. I got a discount code and link down below. Go ahead, check it out. They got a lot of new graphic tees coming out for the fall as well. All right, so we are talking about risky diet and exercise habits or approaches to fitness in today's episode. Now, it goes without saying that there is no such thing as risk-free exercise. I was just out on my mountain bike today and riding around Bear Creek and Green Mountain here near Morrison, and if I wanted a risk-free life, I sure as heck would not be trying to careen down mountainsides as fast as I can on a mountain bike. Even though they've gotten a lot safer and they've gotten a lot more comfortable ever since I started racing when I was in the mid to late 90s, there's still an inherent risk to these sorts of things. And the same thing goes with fitness as well. You're not going to have risk-free. However, when it comes to getting and maintaining the results you want the odds to be as much in your favor as possible. Kind of like going into a casino and saying, well, you've got a 1 in a million chances of winning it big. You'd be like, that's not very good odds. But if you can get it to be like, yeah, you get about a 1 in 10. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. You know, if I play 10 times, statistically, I'll win at least once. So you can hedge your bets and give yourself the best chances of success. And getting in shape is no different. You want the odds as much in your favor as possible. And it's a good little litmus test for when you're evaluating new habits and new things that are coming across. Lots of times we turn to things like the evidence-based research and anecdotal evidence. We're asking friends and like, oh, would this help me build muscle? And would this make me able to lose weight and stuff? I encourage you to come here and ask questions as well. But the real thing we should be asking is, what are the chances you're going to be able to build muscle and get the results that you want with that method? It doesn't matter if 1 million people saw great, fantastic results by going to a gym doing high volume training. If you hate going to the gym and high volume training just beats up your joints, then the odds are not in your favor. And you always want to take it on a case-by-case basis on what's best for you. So these are things that aren't necessarily bad, and they're not necessarily, I'm not saying don't do them. I'm just saying know the risks, and we're going to be talking about strategies to minimize the risk, so that way you have a much greater chance of getting the results that you want. Oops, Leslie is saying there's a bit of audio disturbance. Let me try something here with, let's try a different microphone. Okay, how does that sound, Leslie? How does that sound? Is that any better? Give me a thumbs up if it's any good. Sorry for the introduction there, folks. I was trying going through the microphone on my camera here as opposed to the iPad, but nonetheless. All right, he says it's okay. Good. Because, yeah, I don't get any feedback or anything here myself. All right, so risky fitness things. One of the biggest risky things that we have, which is the most common, is one of these more subliminal ways on how we're addressing diet and exercise, which is particularly with exercise, believing that it's all about the process of stress and recovery. And I addressed this in Be Fit, Live Free, and even in Beautiful Strength, that when we have this idea that our body changes it because we stress it out, and then we get bigger, faster, and stronger because we recover, we're actually going off a little bit to the side of the route we actually need to take, because stress doesn't change your body. Stimulus does. But when we make stress itself the objective, then when we go into our workouts and we go into our habits and stuff, we're not actually going after the thing that makes it effective. We're just trying to beat ourselves up. We're just trying to exhaust ourselves. We're just saying, I'm going to leave it all in the gym and I'm just going to lift weights until I can barely lift my arms. When I was mountain biking earlier, I'm like, I'm just going to ride my bike until I can barely turn the pedals and I exhaust myself. I used to have that attitude. And the reason why it's so risky is because the more you drain your physiological resources, the more you're going to drain your mental resources, your lifestyle resources, because it takes a lot more time and energy and sometimes money and stuff. I would have still been out there on the mountain, just still riding, going like, I got to make myself all exhausted and beat myself up. But the fact is, that's not how fitness works. You don't get results from stress, you get results from a stimulus. And yes, it takes hard work, and there's going to be stress as a bit of a consequence of some of that. Like, yeah, it was really hard riding up Green Mountain, up the Rooney Trail. My legs are tired. I really pushed it today. But I'm not thinking to myself, oh, that was great because I'm really tired. No, it was great because I charged up the Rooney Trail like a complete boss, and I didn't even stop on that one difficult section, which I usually do. Money, yes, that's great. To a degree, it's even saying that your ability to stress yourself out is almost lazy, because it's really easy to just work yourself into the ground. You just do something a whole bunch, and you with little regard to quality and little regard to whether or not it's effective or not. But when you actually go after the stimulus, you have to evaluate things and be like, okay, what exercises are going to be best for the results that I want? What type of training is going to be best? But the beautiful thing about that is you can get in a good workout, or you can get in a great satisfying meal and have healthy diet approaches and leave plenty in the tank. You don't need to exhaust yourself. You don't need to drain the well, so to speak. And because of that, you leave a lot easier time for recovery. You can have a lot faster results because you're getting more of what you actually need. And more importantly, it doesn't drain your body, mind, and lifestyle nearly as much of just energy. So you're not as exhausted from it all. Now, back in the day, I remember I used to push myself and drain myself so much that I would go on these bike rides or go in these gym workouts and stuff, and I would be so tired. And one thing I've learned about me is that when I get tired, I get grumpy. I get very, very agitated. My fuse is quite short. So I would like go and exhaust myself in the gym, and I would barely eat anything because I thought that was a mark of a healthy diet, was anything that was really hard to do. And then I would go into a social situation and I'd be all like short-tempered and surly and rah, 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 and people like, you okay? What's up, man? I'm like, ah, yeah, rah, rah. And that was just the consequence of being so burned out, when it didn't mean no good to be so burned out. But I thought that's what I had to do because I thought that success in fitness was all about stressing the body, stressing out body, mind, and lifestyle. And it's not about stress. It's about stimulus. It's about achieving the fundamental objectives that help you get what you want. And if you don't know what that is, then hard work and stress becomes the goal. I'll get you out of the light here. And when you know what your goal is, when you know what your objective is, you get enough work in to relatively manage it and achieve it. And then you're like, okay, I'm done. It's like, yeah, but you're not like crawling out of the gym. Not to mention the fact that the more tired you are, the more susceptible you are to injury too. When you are strong and high energy and and you have good technique, you're much less susceptible to injury. But when you're kind of just staggering around and your form is breaking down and everything, that's when you're more susceptible to injury. So I always try to stay well away from that level of exhaustion when I can help it. Sometimes it's inevitable. And if I'm going to ride my bike, 100 miles, I'm going to be very tired and just coasting into the driveway. But for the most part, I don't seek stress and exhaustion. I seek stimulus. And once I've achieved a stimulus, or once I've experienced a good degree of fatigue, and I'm like, okay, this fatigue is now compromising my stimulus, I'm done. Yeah, I know I can always do more work, but I'm done. It's not worth it. It's not worth the high level of work of stress on it. So that's risk number one: is seeking out stress and hard work. Don't seek out the work. Don't seek out the stress. Seek out the stimulus. Like all things, when you know what stimulus you're after, when you know what your fundamental objectives are, you have a much higher chance of getting what you want without wasting time and energy. Okay, risky myth number two, not three, two here, is in order to build muscle, you need to be in a calorie surplus. This one is huge, and it can lead to a cascade of all kinds of detrimental outcomes and behaviors. So, first and foremost, as I've addressed many times here on the podcast, no, of course, you don't need to be in a surplus in order to build muscle, because that's the very definition of a surplus, is something that is not needed, has no use, has no purpose. I am drinking my tea out of my mug here, and I have a coffee mug to do this. But if I had 30 coffee mugs, that would be a surplus of coffee mugs. I'm like, I only need one. Maybe I could do two and like double fist or something, but what the hell am I doing with all these coffee mugs? Like, no, that's a surplus of coffee mugs. I have no use for it. And that's the same exact thing with calories, because that's how calories and energy work is if you consume enough, then you get benefits. But if you're consuming more than you need to, then you have detrimental effects. And the rhetoric around building muscle is that you need to be in a surplus, which you don't need to be in a surplus to do anything, because a surplus by definition has no purpose or usefulness to it. But that doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't be eating plenty. I mean, I eat 4 or 5 meals a day sometimes. Yes, absolutely. If you want to build muscle, you should be eating. And you don't want to eat like a bird. You want to eat a lot. Make protein a good, strong staple of each meal that you have. And we were talking about odds earlier that, yeah, the more you are eating good, solid, standard meals and not following any sort of dietary approach, then the more the chances are you're going to adequately satisfy yourself. But you have to recognize that, like everything to do with nutrition, getting more is only going to help you if you have use for it. In other words, it's not a surplus. Once you cross over into surplus territory and you're consuming stuff your body has no practical use or healthy benefit from, then it serves you no purpose at best, and it makes you fatter, it makes you slower, it eats time and increases your grocery bill and stuff, and there's no benefit to it. There's no benefit to this. If you eat more and you're like, man, I'm recovering faster, I feel great, and I'm making better gains, that's not a surplus. That's called eating enough. Now, why is this such a detrimental thing? I mean, aside from the fact that you're just putting on needless body fat for no good reason, and the fact that it's increasing your grocery bill, plus the time and the energy for meal prep and consuming it and everything, is that the whole idea of like, oh, you got to be in a massive surplus to build muscle, is it often leads to overeating. And so you overeat, you get fatter, you gain body fat. And yeah, there's something to be said for all sometimes putting on a little bit of body fat when you're like, I just want to make sure I'm getting plenty of calories, and I want to make sure that I'm giving myself the best chance of building muscle. I want to make sure I've got that. That's fine. That's great. And when you are an individual who is going after that last little 0.01% of gains in order to look as good as possible stepping on stage or something, then it has much more practical application. But that's not how the rhetoric that fits most people. Most of us aren't going to step on stage. Most of us are going to have no benefit from that extra 2 or 3 pounds of muscle. It's not even going to be noticeable, but it's going to cost you dearly in order to make that happen. The other thing too, excuse me, the camera here, is that when you gain that fat, you also need to lose it too. In most cases, most people are going to have to, well, I gained it, so then gaining fatter also leads to cutting. Like, okay, I cut. Why? Because I gained a bunch of body fat. Okay, well, that's not fun either. Therefore, you got to be in a caloric deficit. Probably, usually, a lot of people are restricting their calories and oftentimes trying to increase caloric expenditure, often with walking and cardio and things like that. That's not fun either. That's also costly. Plus, during that period, you're giving yourself less of a chance to build muscle. So if you had a bulk and cut cycle that lasted 6 months, let's say, you're only giving yourself a real good chance of building muscle for 3 out of those 6 months. Now, I don't know many guys who would be like, yeah, okay, I only want to stand a good chance of building muscle only half of the time at best. I'm still going to be lifting, still going to be eating, but I want to only potentially build muscle a fraction of the time. Doesn't it make more sense to say, I want to potentially build muscle all the time? And it's like, no, let me purposely sacrifice most or at least half of my time for building muscle to strong caloric deficit, where again, that's a bit of a myth too. There's no such thing as a caloric deficit. You're not able to burn more calories than you consume. You always burn as many as you consume. The difference is where you're consuming it from. If you burn 2,000 calories, you consume from food 1,500 calories, you're still consuming that extra 500 calories. It's called you, your body. You're consuming the fat stores from your body. You're still consuming it. You're still technically consuming it, sometimes muscle too. So that's a big risk there. The other risk is kind of a mental thing too, where people will just go back and forth between bulking and cutting back and forth. And in many circumstances, this is kind of a little bit of eating disorder-ish. Speaking as someone who fought exercise, bulimia, and disordered eating habits most of their young life, this is not a good thing to subject yourself to. It's very hard on the body, a lot of stress on the mind, sometimes social and lifestyle stress, because it's like, oh no, I can't go to the restaurant. I'm cutting, or I'm bulking, or I got to eat just the right thing. So you're basically making diet and exercise a big part of your lifestyle at this point. So there's the risk there. There's also the risk, which sometimes happens, where people will bulk up and they're like, yeah, okay, I got stronger in the gym. I'm sure I'd put on some muscle. Time to lose this 20 pounds. And they can't do it. They really struggle with doing it. A lot of times people talk about, losing body fat like it's the simplest, easiest thing to do. It's really hard to do even under the best of circumstances. And a lot of people will struggle with that. Many people even find that they have to cut for significantly longer periods of time than they bulked for, where it's like, okay, I'm going to bulk for 2 months and then I'm going to cut for 3 months kind of idea, because it just takes longer, especially if you do this repeatedly in a cycle. Your body becomes more adept at preventing fat loss when you change your diet and exercise habits. So the first time you bulk and cut, you could be like, oh yeah, I lost that 20 pounds of body fat, no problem. Yeah, that was not too bad. And then the next time they do it and they're like, what? Wait a minute, I lost like 5 pounds and now I'm not losing anymore. Wait a minute, this is way harder. And every time you do it, losing that body fat just gets harder and harder and harder, because your body adapts to diet just the same way as it does to exercise. And in exercise, we see that as a good thing. It's like, well, yeah, it adapts. It gets stronger, it gets bigger, it gets more proficient at the exercise. This is good. But adaptation for diet means you regain and achieve a homeostatic balance from your calories a lot faster, which means you stop losing body fat a lot faster. You hit plateaus that are much longer, you hit them sooner, and it takes significantly more work to try to lose the body fat, generally on average, in order to do that. So the reason why I'm kind of painting this doom and gloom is, I'm not saying don't do it and everything. I'm just saying this is the risk that we face when we have bulk and cut cycles. And more importantly, as I've addressed many times here on the channel, it's largely completely unnecessary. Like, you don't need it at all, because yes, you need to eat to build muscle. Sure, absolutely. So why don't you just eat enough all the time? Eat enough that you're satisfying your hunger, you're getting good amount of protein every day, all the time. You're still training really hard. If your appetite goes up because you're really crushing in the gym and you're really kind of going through a building phase, then by all means, eat more. Like I said, I'll sometimes have days I eat 4 or 5 meals. I'm on the Hobbit diet. I eat at least 2 breakfasts every day. I get up and I usually have like yogurt. Now they got these yogurt smoothies you can buy in the grocery store. That's my new favorite thing. Plus one of these super high calorie protein bars that's like 400 calories or so, and a piece of fruit or some berries. So that's breakfast 1. Then I go and I train a couple of clients right off the bat. And then usually I have a lull in the middle. So then I'll come home or I'll hit the kitchen, and then I'll make a big honking breakfast sandwich, 3 or 4 eggs, cold cuts, 3 or 4 slices of cheese and everything, big hearty bread, usually with another piece of fruit, tea and everything. So that's breakfast number 2. And that's normal for me. That's not me bulking. That is a normal breakfast time frame for me. And that's just breakfast. I'll also have lunch. I'll also have dinner. Sometimes if dinner goes a little bit late, I'll have a meal like mid-afternoon, like around 3 or 4, sandwich, something like that. So by all means, eat. But the idea of you need to be in a caloric surplus to build muscle is not only untrue, it's completely unnecessary. But when it encourages you to overeat and put on excess body fat, you don't need to do that. And that can perpetually bring about these swings of, can you lose the body fat? A lot of work to body fat. Now you have to spend some degree of time not trying to build muscle, but trying to lose body fat aggressively. So it's like saying you can't build muscle much of about half the year or so. And that's even if it even happens. And then sometimes there is the risk of psychological where people are like, okay, I got to bulk up, and they spend like 6 weeks overeating. They're like, okay, time to cut. And the second they start eating less and it's compromising their workouts, they start shrinking down a little bit, but they're like, oh my gosh, I'm losing my gains. Boom, back on the bulk. And now it's becoming this psychological warfare with food and your body where you're like, I want to bulk, but I feel like I'm getting fatter. Okay, I want to cut, but I'm losing my gains. And you're in the situation where on both sides, you can't win. You just can't win because it's like, I want to lose the body fat, but I'm losing gains. Well, I want to get bigger, but I'm getting fatter. And it all stems from this idea of you need to be in a caloric surplus to build muscle. You get rid of that, all of that stuff just crumbles away. And you adequately feed yourself. You're eating to satisfy. You're eating much more to give yourself adequate recovery. Much of the time, it's a lot less stressful on body, mind, and soul, and it gives you much greater chances, plus much duration of time where you can actually build muscle. Again, I'm not saying don't do it, but I sure as hell don't do it for those reasons, because frankly, it sure as hell ain't worth it. And someone could come up to me and they're like, well, this research shows that you're probably 5 pounds lighter on muscle than you would be otherwise. I'm like, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. I don't care. It's not worth it. It is so not worth it. Again, speaking as someone who had a lot of exercise bulimia and stuff growing up, that sucks. That just flat out sucks. And if I could do it all over again, I would go back in time, tell my younger self, like, stop it with this crap. You're not better off this way. It is much, much, much worse. All right, so risky things number 2. To lose weight, you need to do a lot of cardio. Okay? And again, this is the idea of, well, I want to lose weight, I got to burn a lot of calories, something you definitely can be beneficial from. And I know there's lots of folks out there saying like, oh, you can't outtrain a bad diet and all that kind of nonsense, which is 100% not true. Again, speaking from somebody who had exercise bulimia growing up, you absolutely can out exercise a bad diet. Many people do it all the time. It just takes a lot more exercise than you think it does. Like an hour a day, sure as hell, ain't gonna cut it. But I digress. But the idea is that no, you don't need to do a lot of cardio. You just need to be in a caloric deficit. And you can do that, of course, with diet. And you don't need to do a lot of cardio. You just want to have some degree of activity. Because when it comes to calorie burnage, it doesn't really matter what you do to burn a calorie. And burning 10 calories will have the same influence on your caloric expenditure and caloric deficit, regardless of how you're burning them. It can be cardio. It can also be mowing the lawn with a push mower. It could be washing your car by hand. It could be doing 100 things. So calorie burn is what we want. So my attitude is always just burn calories doing something productive. And it doesn't necessarily need to be cardio. And when we have that, we have less dependence on the cardio. Because one of the things that's been shown very consistently in literature is that when we engage in particularly long-term exhaustive physical exercise, we way overestimate how many calories we burned. Like I was on the mountain bike today. It was, I don't know how long that was, but that was probably about 2.5, 3 hours of riding, and the knee-jerk reaction for a lot of people is like, wow, that was really hard. I bet it burned a lot of calories. You probably didn't burn nearly as much as you think you did. So my adage is this: don't do cardio for calorie burn. Don't even try to burn calories. Burn calories for the sake of being active for other things. I went out mountain biking because I love mountain biking. It's a beautiful day out here, and I just felt like I need to have an expenditure of energy, not necessarily caloric energy, just I just need to get out and just jack my heart rate up like crazy. And it felt wonderful. I did it to feel good and it worked. Also, just being active for the sake of activities and hobbies. I'm a martial artist. I'm a skier. I do calisthenics. I do a bunch of things. That all counts for burning calories. It doesn't need to be cardio. So I'm getting a lot of energy expenditure throughout the day by being active for things other than cardio. It's just I'm active for other things. And I've got, an active commute I'm going to be starting to do as well. So I'm going to ride my bike to work because it'll be practically down the street from me. It's this new position I'm taking on. So yeah, that's going to burn calories. You could look at it as cardio, but it doesn't matter if it's cardio or getting the heart rate up. It's just energy expenditure, and that'll save me gas too. So no, you don't need cardio to lose body fat. People do it without cardio all the time. Always remember, my friends, that when it comes to the necessity of habits, it doesn't matter if it works. I did tons of cardio, lost body fat. So what? The question is, do you need to do it? Is it necessary? And if there's any prevalence of examples of people who've achieved a result without doing that thing, then no, it's not necessary. So that gives you the freedom to choose to do it for your own sake. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. It's not necessary. But if you like to do it, then go for it. I know lots of people who are like, oh man, it's so much easier to lose body fat if I could just be more active, and I love a good run and it really helps. I'm like, great, go for it. But do you need it? No, absolutely not, for sure. Lucas, my friend, coming on saying, is there benefit to cranking out reps near the end, even if the range of motion falters, but tension control muscle engagement is still there? So this is similar to what I was talking about last week, where I was talking about having an isometric finisher on your last set when you're doing your double tap training. And basically, it's kind of like a bit of a drop set. Your muscles are no longer able to produce enough force so that they can continue doing the exercise. That's what reaching failure is that the amount of force necessary to continue doing reps is no longer able to be met by the amount of potential output of your muscles. Your muscles are like, Captain Kirk on the bridge, and more power, Scotty. And they're like, I'm giving her all she's got, Captain. That's what failure is. So when you downshift, like with the isometric finishers I was talking about last week, or in this case, doing shorter repetitions and stuff, you're basically saying, okay, I know you don't have enough energy to do this exercise in this way, so I'm going to downshift to a version that doesn't require as much energy, so you can keep going. There's lots of ways you can do this. You can do this with drop sets with less resistance. You can, in your case, doing it with shorter ranges of motion. You can use an easier technique, like if you're doing push-ups and then you drop down to doing push-ups on your knees. Lots of ways. It's still the same thing. It's just find a way to keep going, even though the level of resistance is dropped down, so you don't need as much energy output from the muscles. It's a very good, it has a real good satisfying feeling of still making sure that you're creating maybe a stronger stimulus for hypertrophy. Unfortunately, the evidence, a lot of the research out there shows that it may not really do that much for gains, though. They've done things on drop sets and pause rest training and things of that nature. And they show that as long as you're just getting the muscles to a red zone close to failure, it doesn't necessarily seem to matter if you just keep going beyond that. Now, I like, for me personally, again, it's a psychological thing. It's like I like to just smash that nail into the wood a couple more times with a hammer just to really make sure I drive that nail in. But in all honesty, those extra hits probably don't do you much good. So in this case, Lucas, in the evidence-based world, it probably says, yeah, it's probably not doing you that much good. But, if it makes you feel good and it makes you more satisfied, I say go for it. That's why my recommendation, like last week when I was talking about the isometric finishers, I was like, just doing it at the end of your second set with double tap training. It's a small little thing that you can tack on, really doesn't cost you that much time and energy, doesn't really increase the risk of things like injury and burnout really that much. It's a small thing that can potentially produce a worthwhile benefit, in which case that's the recipe for doing it, in my opinion. So give it a shot. Hope you have fun with it. Moving on, risky things in our fitness culture that are highly encouraged. Also, in the name of fat loss, we talked about cardio. Do you need it? No, but it can be helpful. And being active is good, but you certainly don't need cardio. And cardio is one of the most expensive forms of exercise that we have, as far as time and energy and stuff. So knowing that you don't need it means that you don't have to force yourself to overexpend yourself. Also, on the guise of losing body fat, you need to follow a strict diet and avoid, quote, bad foods. Again, completely unnecessary. Although a lot of the rhetoric and the dogma out there will make it seem like so. Like, oh, you can never eat this food. Food is the worst thing for you, and all the things. Lots of influencers out there will tell you that this is the food that's making you fat and stuff. And it's just simply scientifically not true. No food makes you fat in and of itself. I guarantee you, the leanest people you see out there are eating just like the fattest people. The only difference is the portion sizes. That's it. I eat pizza, burgers. I was out with a buddy of mine yesterday. He just got engaged and we're celebrating stuff. I was eating those garlic Parmesan fries like they were going out of style. And I was drinking beer and nachos and everything. So, I eat that just as much as anybody, or just like anybody else. The difference is I don't do it very often. I can't remember the last time I had French fries. So, it's not going to be a normal thing. And that's the difference. So do you need to avoid this stuff? No. Is it good to cut back and stuff? Absolutely. If you look at your diet and you're like, yeah, I got a lot of processed foods here. I got a lot of junk food. I got a lot of high calorie density foods. By all means, you're going to have a lot easier time losing body fat, cutting a bunch of that stuff down quite a bit. Focusing on proteins and plant-based sources and things of that nature. But do you need to do it? Do you need to eliminate it and eradicate it? No. I guarantee you're not going to have a significant influence on your body fat levels if you have it once in a while. It's always about the repetition about it. Now, if I went out and I did that every weekend, or even a couple of times a week with my buddies, would that make a difference? Absolutely. I probably consumed damn near 3,000 calories extra last night in addition to the dinner I had beforehand. So is that a big deal? No, because I only did it once. Probably going to be a long time before I do it again. But if I did it much more frequently, then it would be a problem. So it's always about the frequency of these things that you got to pay attention to. Just because you have it once in a while doesn't mean it's going to have much influence over your outcomes. And you don't need to be super strict with your diet. In fact, if anything, the research also shows that folks who don't follow super strict diets often have a much easier time losing body fat and keeping it off, for the simple fact that it's just a hell of a lot less stressful. The first point I made in the podcast today, the episode today, was that stress is a bad thing in excess to the body. Yes, we have to have it to some degree. It's inevitable for sure, but we sure as hell don't want to just pile it on for the sake of piling it on. Anytime you can get productive with less stress on body, mind, and lifestyle, the better. It's just flat out better to have less stress on things and make it easier on yourself, because a lot of the stress that we impart upon ourselves is holding us back because it's not moving the needle. It's not giving you any benefit. So if you don't have to super strictly eat, clean all the time and stuff, there's no benefit to doing it. And there's probably benefit to not doing it just because it takes some of the edge off. It's like, because again, my experiences with eating disorders and stuff, that's what drives eating disorders and disordered eating habits is stress. It's stressful to overeat. It's stressful to undereat chronically. And each swing of the pendulum driven by stress is you're relieving one kind of stress, but imparting another kind of stress upon yourself. And the best way to be fit and live free and just get and maintain the results you want is to have as little stress upon yourself as possible that you have upon it. And that's the way to go forward. Keep calm. Saying, why do you look older compared to your older videos from 8 to 10 years ago? Because it was 8 to 10 years ago. Actually, interesting though, one of the things that did happen like 10, 15 years ago and stuff is that I grew up in Vermont from up until 35 or so. was in my mid 30s when I moved here to Colorado. And one of the things about Vermont is we get like no sun. We have like very little sun in Vermont. It's a much more northern state and upstate Vermont. Plus, we have a lot of precipitation. So we would make the common jokes like in the summer. It's like, what's that thing in the sky? And someone would be like, I've heard it's called the Soon. It's a meteorological event that comes across Vermont every once in a blue moon. Seriously, get very little sunlight in Vermont sometimes. My first year of mountain bike racing, I did 22 mountain bike races, of which 22 races, of which 19 were in the rain. So that gives you an idea. So that lack of sunlight makes you look a lot younger. If you ever want the ultimate skincare routine, sunscreen and shade as much as possible. But now I live out here in Colorado, and I was out mountain biking Bear Creek Green Mountain today, and that's all exposed. So I'm getting a lot more sunlight out here. Plus I'm at altitude here, and those UV rays at altitude are no joke. They are a real deal, and that ages your skin a lot faster as well. So that's part of it, is I just have a lot more sun exposure, risky sun exposure out here. And yeah, that's going to age you faster. But I still look young for my age. I'm going to be 48 in a few months. Joseph, my man, say, Matt, sometimes I use 20-pound dumbbells. I want to use as little amount of weight. Try to get as much as I can out of the weight. I know about isometrics. What else can I do? Like I said in the last episode last week there, Joseph, I think you're ready to really step up, if you pardon the pun. And I'm assuming you're talking about leg training, because we often talk about leg training when you come on and we discuss these things. But you're probably ready for some much harder leg exercises. Much harder leg exercises, hover lunges, shrimp squats, pistols on a box or something like that. Because a lot of stuff, what you're doing is things like lunges and things where one of your legs is still providing quite a bit of support for the exercise. So let's see if we can't get like 90% of your weight on one leg for various things. I think you're ready for the heavier stuff, and that's going to take a bit of a learning curve, but it's going to make a big difference for you. And he follows up saying, yes, I'm talking about legs. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is leg training. I've got to make this video. I've got a new leg training video I'm working on, all about calisthenics leg training, because leg training with calisthenics can be a real game changer. When I got into calisthenics almost 17 years ago now, the thing that saw the biggest improvement by far were my legs. They got much bigger and they got much stronger compared to the weight training and stuff that I was doing. For various reasons I won't go into here, but you can really make some great things happen with legs, but you got to know what you're doing. And unfortunately, a lot of the classic step-by-step progressions and stuff that you find out there can be inadequate for a lot of people when they're trying to really work their legs to a higher degree. And that's what I'm hoping to address in the new video. So already talked about basically across the board. I've got multiple notes here, but across the board, when we are pursuing fatigue and exhaustion, we're just increasing our risk of stress and detrimental effects when it comes to diet and exercise habits. That doesn't mean like be afraid of it. I don't want this to be like, oh, Matt says don't go to failure, and I should stop my workout the moment I start to break a sweat. By all means, push yourself. Yes. Exhaust yourself even from time to time, by all means. The difference, though, is what are you pursuing? If you pursue fatigue and exhaustion, you're going to find it, but you're literally playing chicken against the edge of a cliff. How close can I get to the edge before I fall off? It's like sooner or later, you're going to take one step too far if that's your game. Don't pursue the fatigue and exhaustion. Just let it happen where it happens. Instead, of course, always pursue your objectives and be mindful of your fatigue and your exhaustion. But it's not the goal that we want to be striving for. Here's another big risky idea in our fitness culture, is that there's one correct amount or number to do something. One correct amount of protein, one correct amount of sets you should do, or what exercises. Basically a dogmatic, narrow formula, ideology. Single greatest threat to humanity is dogmatic adherence to ideology, saying this is the way. Fundamentalism in a nutshell, right? This is the one correct way. Everything else is wrong. This is very, very bad for humanity, but it's especially bad in your fitness because what is going to get you the results is not any particular diet and exercise habit or formula. It's whether or not, again, you're achieving your fundamental objectives on a consistent basis. And you can certainly have your ideologies and your formulas that work very well. Double tap training in my beautiful strength program is a great example. Love it, great, awesome, wonderful. But when you become dogmatic about it, you're no longer in charge. You put the rules in charge, and you're assuming that the ideology will take care of you. And spoiler alert, it won't. No ideology ever will. No ideology on economics or politics or fitness, diet, and exercise. It's a general template, but by all means, break the rules. Please break the rules. If you're doing an exercise and you're like, I think I'm better off doing it this way, chances are very good you are. It's like, I don't care if the program says do it some other way. If you can achieve your objective better by doing more or less or a different exercise, then do it that way. Do it that way. Break the rules whenever you need to in order to achieve that objective. So in my double tap training, I'm like, okay, 2 hard work sets per exercise. And you're like, screw that, I want to do 5. I'm like, great, go for it. And please break the rules. Because when we put the rules in charge, we're taking our hands off the proverbial wheel and assuming the car will just steer itself wherever it wants to go. And I know, yes, they have self-steering cars right now, but even still, we don't want to put something else on autopilot in control. I want you to have the empowerment and control. So use these things as general templates. How much protein should you have? How many sets should you do? What's the best exercise for shoulders and whatever? Use that as a starting point. But if you ever want to or feel the need to make a change, by all means do so. And if you're discouraged from making changes from the ideology or any fundamentalism being sprouted out there, that's a sign of an unhealthy approach. Because ultimately it means that the dogma's in charge, not you. Against gravity. Cool name. I like that. Our pause chest to bar pull-ups, a harder progression. Next step for feet elevated, inverted rows, not touch and go, but 1 to 2 second pause, scap retracted, break the bar feel for mid-lower traps, rhomboids. I think that's probably going to be several steps above that, in fact, with a feet elevated, inverted rows. Because, yeah, that could be very hard, but if you can do that, you're probably going to be able to do a pull-up, but maybe not quite get your chest to the bar. If you can, that's awesome. That's very good. But that's the cue I always give folks, yes, is when you're doing pull-ups, doesn't matter what grip you're using or whatever, but you want to try and get that gap between your hand and your chest closed. Because when we do pull-ups or pull downs also on a cable machine, we often think to ourselves, this is about down, like a vertical pulling downward motion. But like with a pedal stroke on a bicycle, you can only go down for so far, and then you have to start coming backwards in order to keep making upward progress and bringing your chest to the bar. And so that's what your cues here, which are excellent, are all about, is making sure that the arms are driving back and retraction, particularly using your traps, not just your lats with that. So yeah, they're definitely a progression, but the question is, where is the progression in someone's journey on strength? If they can bang out inverted rows just fine, but they're struggling to do 5 regular pull-ups and they're barely able to get their chin to the bar, I would say don't even worry about the chest to the bar or the pause aspect. I would first focus on just, can you get any semblance of pull-up from there? And then you can start to whittle the technique. The other thing you can consider too is, are you getting all the way down with a good range of motion at the bottom too, while maintaining tension in the back? A lot of times, my friends, progression isn't about a formula. It's about just simply looking at whatever you're doing and saying, okay, so what's the 1% way that I can improve this? And that can be very different from one person to the next. You could be on inverted rows and you're like, yeah, see, I've got inverted rows. I'm like, yeah, but your elbows are like winging way out and your shoulders aren't moving. So there's a progression there we can start to explore. Or you're bucking with your hips, and reaching food with your chin as you're doing this and stuff. Progression is ideally always about, all right, you're doing it this way. Now, how do we do it 1% better or harder to, again, achieve that objective? That's the thing, that's the next step, not necessarily what's in a book. So when you have progressive calisthenics training books, like in my books or like combat conditioning or something, these progressions are not the path to success. They're just guideposts. They're just kind of guideposts along the journey of like, okay, go towards this guidepost or go towards this mile marker kind of thing. But you always want to make sure that you're placing one foot in front of another within the step you're currently on, because most of the time you're going to make progress by focusing on improving what you're doing now, not what is the next step that you can do with a completely different exercise. So again, case in point, against gravity, you're talking about like getting a little more range, pulling the chest to the bar. That's fantastic. But if you've got 5 other things that are kind of a little more important for your rows or your pull-ups before that, I would say focus on those things first. Wesley saying, I've been trying to balance out the size difference between my arms and legs after an accident by doing extra reps on the smaller side, but I'm not getting bigger on that side. Any ideas? Lots of times, differences between your right and left side will just iron themselves out. You don't necessarily need to do anything unusual about that. Sometimes if you have a big discrepancy, which you may because you had an accident, that may work where you do more on one side. But the risk with that is that you can compensate. So if you're like doing dumbbell curls on your left side and you're like, yeah, I got 10 reps. And then on your right side, I'm like, yeah, I got 10 reps, but you're using a little more body English. You're still getting the job done. You're making your performance the same, but the muscles aren't doing the same thing. So usually what I recommend is make sure that when you're doing your exercises, like your bilateral stuff, just pay attention to what your 2 sides are doing. If you do a push-up, are you leaning slightly towards the stronger side? That's usually a telltale sign I'll see when people are doing push-ups and one arm is tucked in more than the other. It just means that their weight is ever so slightly going towards the stronger side. So usually that's all that's necessary, is what is the slight technical difference between your weaker side and your stronger side, and just trying not to do that thing. I know it's pretty simple, but literally that's about all it takes. I used to have a big, hard, chronic imbalance in my right hip. And my friend was like, oh, you shift a little bit to your side when you do this exercise. I'm like, oh. So I just focused on not shifting, fixed it. So you don't necessarily need to do extra work. Case in point, folks, the topic I'm going to address next week, or maybe in an episode, a video that I'm going to post later this week. We'll see how it kind of pans out. But a lot of times our knee-jerk reaction, again, the rhetoric is more stress, more in our fitness culture. When the fact is, a lot of times it's not so much more, but just better that gets you the results that you want. And this is why a lot of folks, they are critical of like my double tap training and micro workouts, because they're like, this doesn't feel like it's enough. Should I be doing more? What if I added a workout? What if I added this and added this and added this? In that case, again, you're not going off of an objective. You're not going after, anything productive. You're just assuming more work means more results. And you're still under the idea of, I should be exhausting myself even more. I should be tired and worn out and sore, right? From the stuff. And the answer is, well, sometimes, sure, that's going to happen. But no, that's not the goal. The goal is not fatigue and exhaustion. The goal is achieving an objective. And in this case, you are going after just bilateral equality between your sides there, Wesley. And that will probably take care of you. And that's what I'm going to address in that video, is how do you get better results without adding extra work, without doing more or doing a tiny little bit more, because more doesn't produce better results. Better produces better results. Sometimes that means doing more, but not always. And when you pursue just more, a lot of times what happens is you actually do worse. And that's when you get compromised. Anything, that's the big takeaway from this. More isn't better, harder isn't better. Exhaustion isn't better. Fatigue isn't better. Just better is better. But if you don't know what your objectives are, you don't know if something's better. You're just going after something that just feels about right. Other ideas here that carry a high risk. You need to cover all of your bases because of health or performance. So this is less prominent, but it does come across my desk once in a while where I'll have someone who's like, okay, want to get in shape, and I'm doing calisthenics, and I'm a cross country runner. Okay, great, awesome. And then the next week they'll come in and be like, okay, so I've also heard that yoga is really good, so I'm going to start taking a yoga class. Sure, great. Saturday morning yoga, go for it. Yeah. Wait. I've also heard that I need kettlebells for explosive power, and I should do powerlifting, or else I'm never going to get stronger. And then by the time like a month goes by, they've got like 50 things because they're like, I got to cover every conceivable base, don't I? And the answer is no, because remember that when it comes to fitness, we have finite resources: time, energy, money, and all these other sorts of things. Not to mention that most of these resources are taken up by things outside of fitness: job, family, hobbies, and so on. So we need to be selective about the things we want to pursue and know that, yes, you're going to suck and not get very far with most things. I can't swim worth a damn. I'm a terrible runner. My hips are so tight, you could probably play guitar on my hamstrings. I suck at almost everything in fitness. I'm tight, I'm stiff, I'm weak, and I'm very imperfect in my performance. And that's called reality. You're going to be bad at most things. But a lot of times when you get folks who are really enamored or drunk their own Kool-Aid, like this is the most important thing in the world, if whatever methodology they're doing. Case in point here, calisthenics, right? But if you're like, I just want to build muscle, I want to look good, I want to feel good and stuff, do I need to do calisthenics? Absolutely not. Absolutely no good reason to do it whatsoever if you don't want to do it. Because you can achieve those objectives 100 other different ways. So if you don't want to do pull-ups, there's no good reason to do pull-ups. None whatsoever. It doesn't matter if it can be beneficial. It doesn't matter if it can work. Remember, it's only if it's necessary. And it's not. So when it comes to this idea of like, I need to cover all of my bases, because if I'm not doing yoga or if I'm stiff, like, aren't I missing out on massive results? And the answer is, yeah, you're missing out on something, but it only matters if it matters to you. I can't swim worth a damn. And that has no detrimental impact whatsoever in my life. I can swim well enough that I won't drown if I fall out of a canoe. But no, if I was a triathlete, that would be a different story. But I can't swim very well, and that's fine. And that's why we need to be selective about what we want to achieve in fitness. Because when we say, I'm going to pursue X, Y, or Z with a good amount of intention and a good amount of resources, you're going to have to say no or very little to everything else, the majority of other things. And yeah, you're going to have folks telling you that you're going to not do those things at a great detriment. But the fact is, no, you're not. If you suck at yoga, that's fine. If you can't do rock climbing, that's all right. If your grip isn't really that strong, fine. Doesn't matter. If it's not important to you, it's not important. We lose sight of the fact that when it comes to fitness, we only need a very low baseline of ability and performance in order to stay healthy. And that is a pretty low bar in order to achieve. You don't need a whole lot of strength and stamina and mobility to achieve that. But those who are really invested in the methods would have you believe otherwise. And it simply isn't true. You don't need to practice most things and be fine. Wesley's following up, saying, Matt, I've been trying to balance out the size difference between my arms and legs. Oh, I already got that. Sorry, I thought that was a follow-up. My bad. I got to regroup here. I love how you guys are talking back and forth. Fantastic. Great idea. Hopefully I'm not missing anything. Let's see, what else do we have here for things that carry risk? Usually not worth it. Kind of like what I was saying earlier, a hard way is the best way. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's worthwhile or effective. There's lots of hard ways that we can things that we can do that are harder that aren't going to be better. So don't feel like you should force it. There's that idea in our fitness culture a lot of times, like if you don't want to do it, that means you should force yourself to do it, or there's more reason you should do it, or if it tastes good, don't eat it. Like a lot of folks, again, they don't know what they're doing, so they're just assuming that harder is better, and that if they're making themselves work harder and sweat blood and tears more, that's more productive. And the fact is, that's just going forth blindly. You don't know what you're doing. And I know because that's what I did for many years. And that is just blind application. You're just assuming that more work is better and that harder is better, when a lot of times it's just wasteful and it's not moving the needle for you. So again, these things aren't necessarily bad. Like, yes, you need to work hard. Yes, you're going to get tired. Yes, you need to eat plenty in order to build muscle. Yes, you need to, cut back on various things and dial in your diet sometimes if you're trying to lose body fat, and get your activity level up doesn't hurt either. But a lot of times these ideas out there of like, you've got to do X, Y, and Z, they're just not necessary, but they carry a risk to them. And especially from your own experience, if you're doing something and you're like, it's got this really big downside to it, like I do it this way, it doesn't matter if it works, because ultimately your motivation to do something is based upon the balance between perceived benefit and reward. So we oftentimes assume that, well, if something's effective, then that's going to be worthwhile. And that very often is not the case. Because if you could get great results, but the costs are so high and there's so much stress to body, mind, and lifestyle, you're still going to quit. You're still going to have a short-term adherence to it, or inconsistency adherence, because ultimately our motivation is what's driving the bus. If you're not motivated to do something, you're just not going to do it or do it long enough to get what you want out of it. You have to have that motivation, full stop. That is 100% necessary to at least continue moving forward. And when we have things that are high cost, low return, or just hard for the sake of being hard, that is compromising motivation. That's the biggest risk that we're looking at here. It's not just the risk to body, mind, and lifestyle. It's also risk to motivation. When we hurt our motivation, we will always hurt ourselves, because that motivation is absolutely critical to success. And if that goes downhill, we're in real deep trouble. So when we're evaluating these things, look at, are you experiencing much detrimental result? And almost always you can significantly reduce that detrimental result. Are you getting lots of joint pain? Are you getting lots of food cravings? Are you feeling anxious about working out in a gym? Whatever it is, a lot of times this negativity is not necessary. And that's one of the sad things about a lot of folks who struggle to get the results that they want in fitness, is because they're doing these things because they've been told it's necessary. And it's just not true. You come to me with whatever you're doing. It's like, if you could snap your fingers and no longer do something in your diet and exercise habits, I can almost guarantee you, yeah, we can get rid of that. You're probably going to be better off for it. And we'll just find some other way to help you achieve those objectives. And it's going to be a lot easier. It's going to be a lot more fun, and it's going to have a lot less risk for body, mind, and lifestyle. And that means that you're going to have less detrimental things that are going to hold you back, because all these bad things just hold you back. They're not a badge of honor, like I used to believe. They're not a source of pride, which is what I used to believe. And they're not something that is telling you you're on the right path. Many times, if anything, you're on the wrong path, and your systems are telling you, it's like, stop doing this. This isn't very good for us. And when you listen to that and you're like, no, but I could do it this other way, that's a lot easier. That's the path forward. That's the way we want to go with it as well. Oh, good idea on the pulley trainer there. That's a very good point. Yeah, absolutely against gravity. Good job. That is a good way to know if you have more weight on one side or the other. That's for darn sure, because it slips out on you. That's fantastic. Wesley's saying, Matt, I think another risk that took me forever to learn was trying to push to equal or do more numbers than the last session, even though fatigue was already set in and form was broken. Yeah, So this kind of goes along with that's a very good point there, Wesley. The idea of progression in one direction or in one quantifiable metric. How much weight is on the bar? How many reps can you do? How many calories are you eating or grams of sugar? Because remember, you're always only going to make progress with one metric for so long, and then you're going to hit a wall because you just can't do more push-ups endlessly. You just can't keep putting weight on the bar. You just can't keep cutting back on sugar or calories. Eventually, you're going to hit that point where you either can't or are willing to keep progressing that thing. And not to mention, as you said, like sometimes things get severely compromised with that, but we get that tunnel vision of like the only thing that matters is how many push-ups I can do. The only thing that matters is how many grams of sugar I'm eating a day or whatever. And you're basically turning on your blinders to everything else that also has the potential to be beneficial. It's kind of like looking through a telescope. Yeah, I can hyperfixate on an object that's 100 yards away, but in order to do that, I need to be blind to everything else around me. When most of the time we need to have some awareness of everything else going around. It's kind of like when they teach us in martial arts and fighting, wide focus versus acute focus. A lot of times, if you get in a fight, the guy in front of you will be like, I just got to keep your attention on me. I don't need to fight you because if I can keep your attention on me, I'm like, look at my hands, look at my hands, look at my hands. Meanwhile, there's two guys coming into you like into the sides like velociraptors and you don't even see them because your focus is so hyper fixated. I'm like, these guys will take care of you kind of thing. It's the same thing in fitness. You get so hyper fixated on how many reps can I do or how much protein am I eating, and you're blind to everything else. And it's that blindness to a holistic approach that really can compromise gains and your overall health. Because there's a lot more to your progress than whatever that one metric is, whatever you're following. Yeah, that's important, but don't hyperfixate on it. A lot of times it's great to let those reps go down. And when I give people advice on doing harder push-ups and stuff, it's like, great, now you're really working your muscles harder and you're going to make them stronger. I'm like, yeah, but now I can only do half as many push-ups. Well, do you want to do more push-ups or do you want to get stronger? Again, we got to select what our objective is because you can't have it all, as they say. You can have it all. You can't have it all at once. So what is important to you, and let yourself be focused on the objective, but take the holistic approach on everything that is influencing that sort of thing. And yeah, Wesley, you're right. It's like kind of like focusing on one metric. And remember, and some days are just not good for whatever reason. Yeah. I just posted a quick short on the YouTube channel on what do you do when things just don't go according to plan? What do you do when your days are bad? It's like, okay, I pull out my workout log and it says, okay, you're doing banded dips, 2 sets of 13. What happens if you do it and you struggle to get 9? Does that mean it's a failure? Does it mean it's a bad? No. It's like, well, I guess I got 9 today. Okay. You can look at your, like, I didn't get the best sleep, and yeah, I probably, not the best diet and everything, or maybe I didn't warm up very well. You can Sherlock Holmes and do some assessment on it, but yeah, you're going to have days, weeks, months, years where you're going to be behind the 8 ball. And that's fine. That's perfectly okay because I'm still challenging my muscular work capacity at getting 9 dips. So I'm still creating a stimulus for muscle growth. Still feeling good, getting a good pump. Win. And still working on the technique. In fact, I got even better on the technique because my depth was a little bit deeper and I got more tension in the triceps. Win. So you got all those things going for you. It's like, well, I just didn't get as many reps today. Okay. Most importantly, don't put your self-worth on these things too. That was a big lesson for me a couple of years ago. Never put your self-worth on any single thing in your life. How much money you have, how many reps you can do, how much muscle you have. When you put all of your value on that one thing, then what do you do when that gets compromised? Because it will. Eventually, that thing is going to happen. And so if all of your self-worth is on that, then now you're taking a serious existential hit just because you're losing that thing you have your self-worth on. But the holistic approach, lots of influences, keep that more in mind. It's going to be a lot better for you. All right, folks, I am going to vamoose. Thank you very much for coming on, everybody. Remember, I've got that video coming out soon on simple ways that you can do better in your diet and exercise habits without doing more work. And again, today's sponsor is Into the AM apparel to really highlight and showcase your beautiful strength without looking to try hard or looking like you spend your life in a gym. Link down below as well as discount code. Thank you very much, everybody. Audio will be posted in the next 24 hours or so. I will see you on the other side. Till then, be fit and live free.